My name is Irina. I am a software engineer at CFGOnesToWatch2017 Group. I'm originally from Ukraine, from Odessa, and I came to London 10 years ago, where I had a family, had a baby, and then went to study computer science degree at the University of Surrey. And I joined CFGOnesToWatch2017 Group on a graduate scheme, and I'm still here. I am a Node developer, and I'm currently building a microservice for CFGOnesToWatch2017 Group. It's a very interesting project, as it is a first brand agnostic application which handles user account information. And it's the first one for the group, which can be used by many brands of our group. So it's really interesting in terms of technical architecture, and it's very interesting in terms of the actual structure and inner structure of the components within the service. And it's really interesting. We get to, I get to develop it in Node with React and as a team. Yeah, so I had my first son, and when he was 2.5, I did a foundation course in engineering, math, and science, which then allowed me to go on to computer science degree at University of Surrey. So I had him, and at the end of my first year of my degree, I had another baby and carried on. It's actually crazy. This is crazy. I planned my second baby to be born in the middle of August, so I could sit my final exams. When he's a few weeks old, I could go back to studies, and I did that. So I kind of fitted him around a little. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, and it was really, I found it difficult, both physically and also emotionally, to keep switching between the two roles. And I guess just having a lot of energy, just try to do my best. But yeah, it wasn't easy. I did quite a few all-nighters, and just, I guess while my peers spend time sort of going out and maybe studying a little bit more in depth, I would spend my time in the playgrounds and then catch up on the study. I don't know. I wouldn't recommend that. It's not an easy way to do it. Of course, we covered things like networking and networks and artificial intelligence, and mobile development, web development, all sorts. One of my favorite projects was developing an optical character recognition system. It was an artificial intelligence model, a module for computer vision. I found that fascinating, really, really interesting. And then I also had an element of business in my degree, so I did technical entrepreneurship and business law as a part of that, but mostly it was technical. Predominantly Java, and then a little bit of Ruby on Rails, and well, Android, I guess, is like Java, quite similar, and Python. And just a set of web technologies we learned Hadoop, and it's hard to remember now. So each module was 6 weeks long, and each module would be different from the previous one. I would say that Java was the only constant focus throughout the degree. I actually started when I joined CFGOnesToWatch2017 on a graduate scheme. It was rotation based, and each rotation was 6 months, and within the 6 months, again, there were more opportunities to try out different things. So I've actually started on commerce team for Net-a-Porter.com, where I started working on a purchase path, which is in Java. And I thought, well, it's a really steep learning curve, and it's really, really interesting. And then I realized that actually, maybe I've tried Google Polymer. I've rebuilt our purchase path, parts of our purchase path in Google Polymer components. And I really enjoyed that. And I thought, well, if I enjoy that, why don't I just try it? And so I've switched to Node and web development. And I'm not looking back. Wow. Since I have moved into web development, I've really just worked with Polymer, Google Polymer components, and React and Redux. And I could, comparing Polymer and React, I would prefer React because of the unidirectional data flow, which just makes more sense to me. And I find it easier in many ways. And as you know, I've looked at others like Flux, which is Flux as opposed to Redux, and Redux is a choice for us. It works, so I'm enjoying that right now. Maybe we'll try something else in the future. So we are about 7 developers, which is a large team. We do have a lot of work to get through though. We have 2 testers, but we adopt approach of shared responsibility. So if tester is not available, or you know, we all get stuck in, we all test our own work. We are guided by, we use test coverage tools, and you know, test coverage and comprehensive testing are really, really important to us. So is performance of the web apps. So we kind of, in terms of working together, we also adopt this view of shared ownership and knowledge sharing, and we pair a lot, but then we also work independently a lot as well, and do peer reviews for each other. So that really works for us. Our typical day would be, our typical sprint week would be, we use Scrum, so we would do pre-planning on a Monday, and then you know, the usual, we would plan our work in the following day and just work our way through through the week, and that's working for us at the moment. So we pair, developers pair across skill levels. We have senior pairs, junior pairs. We pair with graduates as well. So we continue with our graduate scheme. And currently, 3 years ago, I joined as a graduate myself, and I was pairing with somebody more senior than me, learning from them. This year, I've been involved in hiring for hiring process for our graduate scheme. And this year, I'm now pairing with our current graduates and mentoring them, and hopefully, you know, that's working for them as well. I find this such a difficult, hiring is probably one of the most difficult processes, and it's very hard to judge. So I distinguish between intelligence and experience. And so, especially when you hire developers, it's really hard. It's easy to look at what they've done in the past, where they've worked. You know, you can look at their CVs, but it's sort of really difficult to gauge what how easy they are to learn, to pick up, how easy they are to fit in the team, how well they will fit in the team, rather. And so I find that quite difficult. And one of the things that I've noticed in our hiring process for graduate scheme was, so we have a combination of individual interviews and assignments, and then we have group exercises, and we have something that's called points. So people would get points for certain behaviors during the exercise, for example. And I think they're really flawed because, you know, often people would get points for speaking too much, whereas maybe somebody else would know the answer to the question, but would be too shy to speak up. So it's finding the right balance. I don't, unfortunately, have a golden bullet, a silver bullet for that, but it's, you know, it is difficult. It is difficult. In terms of the process itself, it's hard. In terms of inclusion and diversity, again, it's a complex problem because we all know there is a gender imbalance in the industry. The answer for me personally wouldn't be to hire women just because they are women into the workplace. We all need to strive to hire good professionals. That's my personal view. I think the task here is not to change the hiring process, but rather make your company appealing for people, for diverse people, you know, people with diverse backgrounds, parents, single people, you know, straight, gay, married, women, men, everybody who is just passionate about technology, and this is what we're here for. So for me, that's to do not with the hiring process itself, but rather with the way technology industry is perceived, and particular organizations are perceived by professionals. I go to technical events. So I like London Web Performance Group, and one of the things I love about being in London is that there are just so many quality events to choose from. So for technical meetups and conferences, absolutely. And I would pick ones that are relevant to the technology I'm working with at this moment in time. Last year, I found Google Polymer was an excellent conference. A few weeks ago, I went to ReactConf in London, and that was absolutely amazing as well, because they were relevant to what I'm working with. I also go to Extreme Tuesday Club, which is more sort of focused on agile and practices, and I go to a conference called XP 2017. So this year, I presented there last year in Edinburgh, and this year I'll be presenting there in Germany. And this is focused on agile and craftsmanship. It's the oldest running conference in the world on agile, and it does attract many industry pioneers who are very influential and very, very inspiring in the industry. And I get a lot from that, and I feed that back to the team as well. It definitely is hard. Even now, I've asked you to cut out bits of this interview, and I'm only to continue. That is difficult. Public speaking is hard. How I got into it, so when I was on my graduate scheme, I pair programmed with senior engineers, and what I found was that the practice itself was viewed as a really powerful mentoring and upskilling tool, and I totally agree with that. And there were certain expectations that I've set for myself, and there were certain expectations that I felt the company set for me in terms of my progress when I pair with other people. But then as time went by, I found out that I wasn't making as good a progress as I'd expected, and there were certain things that didn't quite work, and I was determined to make them work. And there were more sort of, there were more to do with emotional intelligence and just dynamics of working together and sharing a screen. So I started recording and trying to sort of make it work and make it a good experience. And at the same time, I went to a meetup. It was called XP Follow, which is a meetup on extreme programming. I went along with a friend, and they were announcing a call for speakers for the following event. And I thought, and my friend sort of said, why don't you just try it? And I thought public speaking was like my biggest fear, but I also believe in getting out of your comfort zone. If you ever want, I believe in failing to learn. So I'm sort of thinking, well, if I don't do it now, I'll probably never do it. And I find that with public speaking, it's not about how much experience you have. As long as you have something to say, it's not about how much experience you have in the industry. That's not going to make you a better public speaker. It's actually about getting out there and delivering your first presentation. And so I said, okay, I'll do it, and I will share my observations on pair programming. So I put together this talk called Pair Programming from a Beginner's Perspective. And it was looking at the dynamics between a senior developer and a junior developer when working together. And it was focused on exploring issues between developers when pairing across skills and finding solutions to them. And it was then based on my experience of 8 months pair programming with really, really senior engineers. So I was sort of trying to take a different angle at that. And at the end of the talk, there was this lengthy discussion, and it turns out that in my talk, I was looking at the dynamics of working together, but I was also considering the needs of the junior developer and the senior developer when working together, and obstacles from really obvious ones like disengagement due to physical discomfort to disengagement due to experts' amnesia to how they acquired their skills, for example, or lack of communication, or behavioral traits of junior and senior, essentially. So at the end of the talk, then somebody came up to me and said, well, why don't you just pitch that to a conference? That was really, really good. Why don't you submit that to XP 2016? And I thought, well, I'll just give it a go. And sort of one thing led from another. And I'm still working on the subject. and running a few projects on it. So that's how I started with a meetup and led to international conferences. The work, the paper and presentation and the workshop recently delivered, it has resonated with many people. And I think what individuals and industry overlook when practicing pair programming across skill is that it is also a senior has a responsibility of teaching and mentoring, as well as, it's not as simple as teaching somebody a few shortcuts or getting them to write some code out. There is a huge deal of mentoring, teaching, which requires different skill sets to just, technical skills. So what I found was that being an excellent software engineer with many years of experience doesn't actually make you, by default, a good mentor or a good teacher or suitable to program with somebody with not as much experience as you. And vice versa, somebody slightly more junior actually may be better at their job. So there are many aspects that are not considered as part of cross-skill pairing practice, which hopefully we will bring to attention and find answers to the questions of how to solve the issues. I would say the greatest achievement is for sure combining motherhood and a career. I have to say I have so much respect for working parents who also pursue their careers. I found it really difficult, both physically and emotionally, to keep switching between the two roles. And just, I've always sort of had this vision of myself being this magnificent mother. And I have to admit, I fail quite a bit. I underperform quite a bit in that role, but I try my best. And vice versa. I would always strive to be the best professional I can be, the best technologist I can be. But then having parental commitments really does put a limit to what I can and cannot do. So I think, it's it's not easy, but I look back and I've managed to raise two decent human beings, and I've managed to hang on to the job that I really love, and just accept that it doesn't always work according to plan. It's not always perfect, but it's, you just make the most out of what you've got. And actually, yeah, quite proud of that. And actually, my older son's interest in programming is what inspired me to be more active in the wider technology community. So when I was in the second year of my degree, computer science degree, I was developing an Android application for a piece of coursework. And my older son at the time was 6, and he kept coming to me saying, "Mommy, that is so cool. Can you teach me how to program?" And I thought, wow, that's amazing that he's interested, but how am I going to teach Android development to a 6-year-old in a way that doesn't put him off of, software engineering for good? Because there's got to be a right level of challenge and reward to drive engagement, right? So I did some research, and I thought, I came across Code Club. Code Club is a programming initiative for children, which 4 years ago wasn't quite as popular as it is now, but it's absolutely excellent. It's a volunteer-based initiative. And I thought, well, that's something I could do. And then I looked at my schedule and I thought, well, I'm a full-time computer science student. I've got 2 children. I had a 1-year-old baby. How realistically am I going to teach my son systematically? That's probably not going to happen. So what I did was I went to my son's school and I offered them to volunteer to run Code Club for a year. I thought, if I commit to a public channel like that, I have to find time. There is no going back. And that way he will learn systematically. And so I ended up teaching a class of 21 students who were 11 to 12-year-olds and my 6-year-old son for 1 year. And that was the best experience I've ever had. It was so rewarding. Just the excitement and celebration of achievements. It was contagious. And this is what inspired me to kind of remain being active in the wider community. It was really good. It was a two-way street. I taught them a practical skill. They taught me emotional aspect of being an engineer and just in this industry. And actually managed to break a couple of stereotypes as well. There were 2 girls in my class who came up to me and they said, you know, when Code Club was advertised, we didn't sign up because we didn't think we could program. But then we realized that it was Oscar's mommy running it. And we thought that sort of made us more comfortable to try seeing a girl running coding workshops. And they, at the end of the class, they actually said they're considering computer science in their further careers, which was just, you know, the best achievement of all. You know, who's a technologist? It's all of us who work together to deliver these products that are useful and usable. Because if you think about code in isolation, it doesn't actually make, it's not useful. Just some code in isolation set in some repo somewhere, it's not useful to anybody. And it takes so many people, so many technologists to make it into a product that people can then use. And when, you know, coming back to your earlier question about increasing diversity and, you know, hiring passionate technologists, passionate people into our tech businesses, it's about also opening up what is technology industry, what roles are out there, because you can have brilliant minds working together, not necessarily all writing out code every single day. There are so many roles, like you said yourself, QA, you know, UX, UI designers, product owners, delivery managers. There are so many roles that make technology industry a whole that, you know, people should join, and people with different backgrounds can join. So it's about explaining what technology industry really is as well, that could help attract. So you were asking what advice I would have to others who wanted to join technical industry or entrepreneurship based on my own experience. And actually, I would like to say that to me it's an answer of three parts. There's three different parts. Because when starting my career and when going to my course, going through my computer science course, obviously everybody would do that with a goal, and the goal was to be successful. In the end, right? Apart from making the world a better place. What I've learned over time is that success is not just measured by somebody's earning potential. Success is also about really enjoying what you do and really loving what you do. And if you think about it, we spend most of our time, most of our lives at work. So really that's kind of key. So for somebody who's looking to enter technology and entrepreneurship, I would say at the expense of maybe, at the risk of sounding cliche, listen to your heart and really follow what you do. Really follow what you like doing and you know, get into that. That would be my first advice. The second would be to ignore stereotypes. And it is so important, especially for women in tech. It's just absolute key. Stereotypes are evil. When I was 18, my mom said to me, you absolutely must learn how to cook, otherwise you will have difficulty finding a husband. That just sounds outrageous, but I'm pretty sure, and that was a serious advice from a loving parent. And I'm pretty sure that today, many loving mothers give advice like that to their daughters. And it's just break it. That's wrong. We need to really work together to make sure that stereotypes like that are broken and don't have a place in our lives at all. And after that, I would say adopt a growth mindset, and that's what helped me a lot. Not being afraid to fail, but rather trying to learn from failure, because learning and growth are just not possible without failing. And to me, that's kind of the three aspects. And then I've heard a lot of advice about attending meetups and going to conferences and, you know, seeking support and mentorship. And I think they're all great, but to me, they're more like tools, because there is a big difference between attending a meetup and standing in the corner, or attending a meetup and really getting engaged and involved in a discussion. And that comes from A, being passionate about what you do, B, you know, not being afraid to fail, not being afraid to ask a silly question and actually getting involved. And see, not having those stereotypes in your head thinking, I'm not good enough, or I can't possibly be doing that, or that's too advanced for me, and things like that. And I think those three would really help anyone in technology and entrepreneurship, and maybe other industries.